Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you well.
Okay, so you are welcome to the last day of our intervention. So we're going to look at the last two topics and also discuss one or two strategies that you need to apply or adapt for the purpose of the exam. So with the question number 4 and question number 5, it deals with 3 or sometimes 4 topics. The question number 4 has to do with the government external audits and the audit of the public sector. So government external audit and the audit of the public sector will be examined as question number 4. And question number 5A is going to be current issues. And the last one, which is the 5B, may come from what we discussed yesterday. That is the audit of historical information or the other assignments, and audit reporting is going to be our question number 5B. So the 5B can be grouped into 2, 5 marks under historical, 5 marks under audit reporting. So please, for the audit of the public sector and the government external auditing, which we're going to meet for 20 marks, it's more about the public sector auditing. Everything about the public sector can be examined for the 20 marks. So the first part normally will be the Supreme Audit Institution in the public sector. So when we talk about the Supreme Audit Institution, as we have discussed before, we are talking about the Auditor General's Department or the Ghana Audit Service. Obviously, they have a board, and it's also headed by the service itself is headed by the Auditor General. Please know how the Ghana Audit Service examine the accounts in the public sector. Know how the content of the Auditor General's report and appointment of the Auditor General. So please, in most cases, the question is going to be on how the Supreme Audit Institution will help ensure public sector accountability, or how the Internal Audit Agency help ensure public sector accountability, how the audit committees in the public sector will be able to ensure public sector accountability, the reliance of external auditors in the public sector on the activities of internal audit units in the public sector. Please, with the government external auditing, so obviously it has to do with the activities of the Auditor General's Department. Please, we are expected to know it. We've discussed the theoretical aspect, what goes into how the Auditor General examines the public accounts, just to find out whether the account has been properly kept, to find out whether there have been any internal control deficiencies, whether the plan, the objective of the covered entity has been achieved, whether public resources have been used in line with the principle of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, whether there has been delay. So the Auditor General report whether there has been delay in the payment of government portion of dividend. And we are expected to also the responsibility of the Internal Audit Agency. So as we all know, the internal auditors in the public sector are supposed to work under the agency. What it means is that if you are an internal auditor working for the public sector institution, you report to the Internal Audit Agency. So the function of the internal auditors in the public sector is not different from the functions of the Internal Audit Agency. So the Internal Audit Agency in the public sector will be checking whether the covered entity have been able, just like what the external auditors will be doing, whether the public sector institution have been able to manage risk, whether public resources have been used in line with the principle of economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, whether public sector institutions have been able to achieve the objective in any issues of fraud and deficiencies, We also report on it. So that is the work of the internal audit agency. Now, with the audit committees in the public sector, the composition, as we've already discussed, has to do with 5 members. That's the provision in the PFM Act. And the 5 members, 3 external, and the external members will come from the internal audit agency and the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana, our institute. What it means is that once you qualify, ICAG can post you to be a member of the audit committee in any covered institution in the public sector. So these 3 external members, one will be appointed to chair the audit committee. So 3 external and 2 internal. So the internal members will come from the board or the council, that is for institutions with board. And for the local government, the internal members will also come from the assembly members. So the presiding member, that's a PM, will be on the audit committee. And in most cases, the assembly member in charge of the finance and administration will also be on the audit committee in the public sector. And still on the audit committee in the public sector, if you are asked to comment on the functions of the audit committee in the public sector, be thinking about the internal auditors, be thinking about internal monitoring team, be thinking about Auditor General's management letter. So please don't forget the Auditor General's management letter. Parliament's recommendation on Auditor General's report, that is the PAC report, the Public Accounts Committee reports. Be thinking about the internal audit function and the internal monitoring team. So what you're going to do is that you're going to write around this 4. Okay. So what they do is that, or the audit committees in the public sector, what they do is that they ensure or they pursue the implementation of the internal auditors reports. They pursue the implementation of the Auditor General's management letter. They pursue the implementation of the internal monitoring team reports. And they also pursue the implementation of the Public Accounts Committee report or payment decision on the Auditor General's reports. So 4 things. 4 things. So the 4 things has to do with internal monitoring team, internal auditors reports, external auditors management letter, and Parliament decision on the external auditors report. That is the PAC reports. So they are there to pursue the implementation of those reports. Then they will also write on the status. So they're going to account or write on the status of implementation of the 4 reports. So they are there to pursue the implementation of the 4 reports and also pursue or write on the status of implementation or the status of implementation of those reports. So that is the function, or these are the functions of the audit committees in the public sector. So the PAC will perform a role, the Auditor General will perform a role, the controller, who happens to be the chief accounting officer for the government, will also perform a role. Can you take the 4 points again? Yes, so Loretta, the 4 points are, I mentioned internal audit function, that is the internal auditors reports, internal monitoring team reports, Auditor General's management letter, and Parliament decision on the Auditor General's reports. So you're going to write around this 4 when you are given a question on the role or the functions of the audit committee in the public sector. So please, with the first part is basically knowledge. So once you go through it, or once you go through the manual or the content, it should be fine. You should be able to answer it very well. Now, the next one, or the next thing that I want us to discuss, that is the second part of our question number 4, has to do with public sector auditing. Public sector auditing. Public sector auditing. And with the public sector auditing, be thinking about just 3 types of audit, or in the public sector, we undertake 3 types of audits. We have the financial audit, which is not that different from the financial audit we perform in the private sector, because we apply the same procedures in the performance of audits or financial audits in the private sector to the public sector. The next one is the compliance audit, which normally in the public sector, in the private sector, most external auditors will not be interested in. In the private sector, when you are undertaking external audits, the concentration is more of financial auditing. But please, if you want to undertake public sector auditing, it's not only financial auditing. So what happens is that the external auditors in the private sector, their concentration is on always the financials, and that one becomes a financial audit. So what we do in the private sector might not be different from what happens in the public sector. But in the public sector, there is also a need to undertake compliance audits. The compliance audit is where the auditors want to find out whether the public sector institution is complying with all applicable laws and regulations. So if you have any internal procedures, procedural manuals, and any law and regulation in the public sector, how are they complying? So if you undertake the compliance of laws and regulation, it becomes a compliance audit. And if there are no or non-compliance of the laws and regulation, what are the appropriate punishments and the rest? So if your audit is on compliance or non-compliance of the laws and regulation, what it means is that you are undertaking compliance auditing. And this can be undertaken with a normal financial audit, or you go straight into only compliance audit and undertake compliance auditing. The next one is the performance auditing. Performance auditing basically means you are undertaking audit in the public sector to find out whether you've been able to achieve value for money in the public sector. Have we been able to achieve value for money? What we do? Okay, so that is where we look at the economy. So economy deals with the inputs, the cost involved in undertaking activities in the public sector. Is the cost so high or low? So if you're able to beat down the cost, it means that you are performing in the public sector. It means that you've been able to achieve the first principle of economy. The next one is effectiveness. Effectiveness deals with the public sector ability to achieve its objectives. So what you promise the citizens, have you been able to achieve it or not? If you've been able to achieve it at whatever cost, we don't care. It means that you are effective. So if effectiveness has to do with ability to achieve a set objective. So the objective that the institution has set for themselves, have they been able to achieve it? If they've been able to achieve it, then we say that the public sector institution is effective. And it means that they are performing. So when you are designing your audit procedures, you check whether public sector institution is effective or not. And you are undertaking performance auditing. Then the next one has to do with efficiency. So efficiency means your ability to achieve the desired objective at a reduced cost. It deals with the ratio between the input and the output. The economy, the concentration is on the input or the cost involved. Effectiveness, the concentration is on the output, your ability to achieve the objective. Efficiency means that we want to check the ratio between the input and the output. So the objective have been able to be achieved. At what cost? Are we efficient or we are not efficient? So that is how we measure performance in the public sector institutions. Then the last one, which is an introduction to the 3 E's. We normally have the 3 E, now 4 E's, is equity. Okay, fairness in the distribution of public sector resources. So once it is fair, we will say that you've been able to perform in the public sector. So that is what goes into performance auditing. Please, under public sector auditing, we can be examined on only 3 things: financial audit, compliance audit, and performance auditing. 3 things: financial, performance, and compliance. So please make sure the 20 marks in question number 4, you are getting your 15 or 17 out of the 20 marks. Then the last question is question number 5. And with the question number 5, with the question number 5, the first part of question number 5 has to do with the current issues. And with the current issues, we can be given a question on corporate governance practices. Having a board having a charter, board meetings, and recording of the board meeting minutes, appointment of certain positions, then performing auditing of the activities. Proper corporate governance system can be examined as a current issue. It can be issues of risk management as part of the current issue. We can be given a question on how to undertake social, environmental auditing. Please, anytime you are asked to audit anything, the procedures. Yesterday, we discussed that for auditing, it follows basically the same approach. So how do you audit the environment? So you inquire of management, the environmental policies that they're supposed to comply. You inquire of management, how they are complying with the policies. You obtain copy of the environmental policy in the company. Then you inspect correspondence coming from the regulatory authority just to find out whether they are complying with the environmental policy. You undertaking environmental auditing. Okay, you obtain written representation of management. I told you that with the procedures, the review and evaluation of any item, please remember to apply the action verbs, and all the marks will be given to you in the exam room. So the procedures, which is popular and common in the exam room, the review and evaluation should not be your headache because it has been summarized for you. Good. We can also be examined on issues of money laundering. And last sitting, there was a question on money laundering. So money laundering is a current issue now. It can be examined, and when you meet it, you should be able to do it, especially the risk indicators of money laundering, things to prompt you, things you see to confirm or not to confirm, to approve or to disapprove that money laundering activities is going on. The risk indicators, secrecy over transactions, excessive use of wire transactions, the use of large currency or bearer instrument transactions. So what we've discussed under money laundering indicators, just provide it in the exam room and you should be able to pass. The development of auditing standard, how auditing standards are developed and revised. We've discussed that. So once it's given to you, please, you should be in a position to do it. And I told you that, so once the ICAG decide to develop a new standard, the matter will be referred to the IAASB, that is International Audit and Assurance Standard Board. So what they will do is that they will come up with an exposure draft, and the exposure draft is supposed to be published. It's a mandatory process to develop exposure draft and invite public comment on the exposure draft. So the public will add their comments, they will bring their input, they will review the exposure draft, the accountancy body, the auditing firm, the general public are required to bring their input. The input will be taken into place in drafting the standard. The draft standard will be issued by the IAASB, then they will send it to the IFA Council. The council will also review the draft standard, vote on the draft standard. So once they vote and it's approved, that is where we will have a new standard. Or at that point, we can say that the standard has been revised. So this process, those who are writing corporate reporting or any other reporting paper, it's not different from the issue of International Accounting Standard or International Financial Reporting Standard. It follows the same process. The issue of International Public Sector Accounting Standard, it is the same process. So the mandatory process in there is the development of the exposure draft and inviting the public to comment on the exposure drafts. Then we can also be examined on the role of the regulators. So with the regulators, I'm referring to the Bank of Ghana. So you should have general understanding on the role of Bank of Ghana. You know, Bank of Ghana manages or monitors the activities of banks in Ghana. So they regulate all the bank in Ghana. So they set up the minimum capital requirements that are supposed to be complied by all the banks in the country. We should also know the role of a regulator like the insurance company, the insurance commission, be in charge of the insurance, the reinsurance of the insurance companies. So what they do, the activities, they actually monitors the activities of those insurance companies. The stock exchange commission. So they are in charge of listing companies. So they come out the listing rules for companies to follow. So they set out the rules that if you're a listed company, it's mandatory for you to publish your annual financial statement, and the publication should also follow this criteria and other things. They just have that general understanding of what happens at the Ghana Stock Exchange. Then the next one is the National Pension Authority. So they are in charge of pension-related activities. So you should have fair knowledge of these regulators, the Stock Exchange, the BOG, the insurance, and the Pension Authority. Please, it can be given to you anytime you are given a question and the examiner requires the IAAA provision on this, or IAAA provision or question and answer paper on professional skepticism. Please, it's a current issue. You should be able to do it. We can also be examined on a bit of IT auditing, the use of the computer-assisted audit techniques. So as we all know, computer-assisted audit techniques will help you as an auditor. It's going to speed up your work. If you need transactions above 5,000 Ghana cedis or above 10,000 Ghana cedis for you to review, if you want to select it manually, it's going to take forever. Okay, but with the aid of a computer, assisted audit techniques, you can just type within 3 or 4 seconds, it will pop up. So the speed involved, accuracy, efficiency, when it comes to the use of computer assisted audit techniques, it helps you to, especially with the embedded software that is embedded in the client software, it helps you to audit the client system on a real-time basis. So these are some of the advantages of the use of the computer-assisted audit techniques, even though there are some disadvantages because of especially the cost involved in getting the software, the cost of updating the software. Those of us who work in environments where we use a lot of computer software, so you realize that they are very, 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 very expensive. Recently, we're having a discussion as to strategies to protect our data. And please, if you hear the cost of the data encryption tools, it's so expensive. So the cost involved in getting the software, the cost of updating the software is very, very expensive. So that is one limitation when it comes to, or some of the limitations when it comes to the use of computer-assisted audit techniques, and even the training of the staff to be able to use the software to perform the audit work. But clearly, it's very important. It helps you to get evidence as an auditor to conduct your audit work. It's so important. So please, so that is going to be the question number 5 and the question number 4. The second part of the question number 5 will be what we discussed yesterday. So please, we've gone through the 5 questions. And to be honest with you, follow what we have discussed. Those who are writing, follow what we have discussed. Play back the videos. You realize that passing this paper will be very, very, very easy for you. Very, very easy for you. We have experienced 100% pass rate in our teaching center before. The most important thing is to listen to the instructions that have been given to you. Follow it strictly. You will not write too much, but the results will come and you'll be very, very happy. Now, before I invite you to ask me questions, let me mention this, or let me repeat this. Please, for audits and assurance, just like any other paper, try and walk to the exam hall 15 minutes before time, or try and walk to the exam hall 20 minutes at minimum, let's say at minimum 20 minutes before time. Get relaxed, get to the exam hall relaxed. Sometimes the answer booklet will be given to you for you to fill it. Fill all the information in the answer booklet, especially your index numbers and the numbering of the pages. Please do that. Don't use the time that you need to answer the questions to be doing all that. It's a waste of time, and you need to save time to do a lot of review. You have to review your work. And before you be able to get time to review your work, you need to manage the time very well. So try and get to the exam room about 20 minutes before time. when the answer booklet is given to you, fill all the spaces, write the page numbers. Then when a question paper is given to you, before they tell you to start work and you are doing the review or going through the question that has been given to you, sometimes the question paper will be given later, the answer booklet. So when the question paper is given to you and they tell you that you are not supposed to start work, don't start work. But that doesn't mean that you can't write on the question paper. Okay, so you have not started work answering it on the answer booklet, but you can be doing some arrangement on the question paper. So on the question paper, what you can do is that you do the allocation. And what I mean by allocation here is that if you read just go through the requirements and write the topic, the theoretical topic attached to the requirement. So for example, if you read question number 1A, and question number 1A is telling you that of which question number 1A is going to be either ethics, identification of ethical principles, professional liability, fraud and error, and obtaining professional appointments. Okay, obtaining and accepting professional appointments will also be part of your question number 1, but normally in 1B. And the practice management, advertisement, tendering, and those things will be your question number 1. So please, if the A part is on ethics, just write ethics attached to the A part. If the A part, the requirement is talking about professional liability, write professional liability attached to the question. The reason why I want you to do that is that for ICAG audit and assurance questions, if the requirement is quality control, let's say the requirement is quality control, when you go through the case study, you see a lot of ethical issues being raised, but the requirement has nothing to do with ethics. The requirement is on quality control. You have to answer the question in line with the requirement. Please, this is key. Most people write and take extra sheets because some of the things that you write is not relevant. It's not relevant. You have to try as much as possible and go straight to the requirement. Answer the questions really in line with the requirements. So after reading the requirement, if number 1A is under ethics, you write ethics. If number 1B is under the risk or acceptance of engagement, you just write acceptance of engagement. If it is under quality control, you just write quality control. Then you move to question number 2, A part. If question number 2A is under identification of business risk, just write business risk. If it is audit procedures, you just write audit procedures attached to the questions. Question number 3, if it is under audit report to the shareholders or audit report to management and those charged with governance, you just write it attached to the question so that once you get there, you're going to apply that very knowledge, not any other knowledge. Okay, the questions will come with a case, but the answers are specific. That's a major reason why you have students or some students getting 80, getting 90. One guy was writing advanced audit and assurance for a number of times. In fact, he was working with Ghana Audit Service. He rise and fail, he rise and fail. And later somebody introduced my teaching center to him. In fact, he introduced me specifically to him. Then I had a discussions with him for only 3 days. And after the 3 days, I told him that you passed, and he managed to pass. It's all because of the way he was answering the questions. It's not about general application, no. It's not that you have to learn everything. When you get to the exam, we apply it generally, no. The question demands specific answers. It demands specific answers, and you're supposed to answer it in that line. So you need to write all the topics attached to the 5 questions. Apart from where the requirement may not be clear, for you to identify the topic where the question will be coming from. With the other areas where the questions are clear, please, I'm begging of you, try as much as possible to answer the questions in line with the various requirements. It's key, and you have to follow it strictly. We're supposed to follow it strictly. Okay, this is very, very important. Answer it really in line with the requirement. That is my second takeaway for you. The next one has to do with the way you write. Please, our handwriting. We are not saying that beautify your handwriting. Okay, but please, your handwriting is supposed to be readable. It's supposed to be clear and readable. Write clearly. What you are writing, people are going to read it. So it should be readable. It's not supposed to be shortcuts. Please make sure you write it clearly so that any third party reading your work will be able to read whatever you've written on the question paper. So read it, write it clearly. The presentation of your answers, just make it clear. Okay. Then my next one is the margins. Please, this is clear instruction. Do not write in the margins. So when you are getting closer to the margin, move to the next line. You see students writing in the margin, and this is advanced level paper. So if you want to be writing in the margin, it means that you are not ready to be a chartered accountant. So sometimes people will be punished. Please, let's follow that instruction. Do not write in the margin. It's clearly stated. Don't write in the margin. Now, with the arrangement of your questions, this is key. Question number one. If you want to start with A, B, so number one at the top, then in the main content, you have A. You answer your A. If you are moving to B, you move to B. But my advice is that before you move to B, leave about 5 lines. On the average, 2 is okay, but I'm saying 5 for a reason. So leave about 5 lines before you go to the next sub question. You do the same, you leave about 5 lines before you go to the next sub question. You do that till you are done with question number 1. Then maybe question number 2 will follow. You do the same. You write, you leave about 5, 6 lines, depending on your handwriting. If it is so big, add more lines. Now, after answering the questions, my advice is that maximum 2.5 hours. You will finish. You have to finish. And you have to finish because you are not expected to write too much. I don't see the reason why students should be taking extra sheets in advance audits. Go straight to the point. If you have to explain complete sentences, the most important thing is that the sentence that you have written should be clear. Once it's clear, once it's complete, all the marks under the explanation will be given to you. Explaining in auditing doesn't mean you have to be writing pages. Please go straight to the point and answer the question in line with the requirement. Don't provide a lot of unnecessary details. It's not needed. Okay, so once you answer the questions, 2.5 hours, you have to finish, maximum. Then the last 30 minutes, please sit down and review your work. This is auditing. Review is key. Review your work. Go through your work. Make sure what you intend presenting to the examiner is what you have presented to the examiner. This is key. So whatever you intend presenting to the examiner should be what you're going to present to the examiner. Don't write anything with the assumption that what you intend writing might be what is on the answer booklet. Sometimes people feel and they don't understand because they think that you've been able to answer the question very well. They'll push you for you to help them request for a remark. Sometimes we help students to go in for a remark. They show their own answer booklet to them. And after reading, they will see that what they wrote was not what they planned writing. So please, I'm begging of you, when you finish your work, try as much as possible and read through your work. Do a serious review. Read your work as if a third party is reading the work. And you yourself, sometimes you confirm that when you are reading your own work, some of the words you will not be able to see it. It means that the other party will not see it. The person will just cancel it. This is ICAG exam. If the whole sentence does not make sense, pencil will just cancel it and write 0. It's not like academic exam where, you know, lecturers in academic institution, once you write pages, they'll read something small. If it doesn't even make sense, give you 2 or 3. So at the end of the day, you are getting 15. No, this is a professional exam. If it is 0, it's 0. So go straight to the point and answer the question in line with the requirements. So go through your work. And I told you to leave minimum of 5 lines in between, because whilst reviewing your work, you may have a new idea which might not be in whatever you have presented. We cannot confirm that when somebody writes, let's say, a memo or any report to you for you to read. Sometimes when you are doing the review, you may want to ask something. Apply the same principle in the exam room. So when you are doing the review and you feel that there are certain things that you need to add, you add it to the last, there will be a space for you to add it. But if you don't leave enough space before you go to the other sub-question, the idea will come. It can be a fantastic idea, but there will be no space for you to add it. That thing alone can frustrate you in the exam room. It can frustrate you. So please, prepare yourself very well. Leave the 5 lines. So after reviewing, if you have to top it up, then you top it up. So after going through the work, if there are certain things that you need to add, there will be space for you to add it. So sit down and review the work. Yes, I also understand that in answering the questions, some of the questions or 1 or 2 of the questions may be a bit new to you. You may not really have the book knowledge. That is a point that you need to apply. So try and apply it relatedly, so that if the person wants to consider you, the person might consider. That is after you've been able to answer all the questions that you intend answering. You leave a space, bigger space to the questions that require general application. Just give it a bigger space, so that after doing all the writing or reviewing the correct ones, you come back to that question, you read it several times, you get some insight to be able to write something reasonable to get small marks. Please don't forget that you cannot be awarded marks for writing nothing. You cannot be awarded marks for writing nothing. So try as much as possible and approach all the questions that have been given to you. Okay, you might think that what you are writing doesn't really relate to the case study, but it will surprise you that the marking scheme will come and those points may be part of it. So please don't think that because you have not discussed that part, let's say you are asked to undertake write on professional skepticism in the public sector, but in public sector auditing, we didn't mention professional skepticism, but you know the professional skepticism in the private sector. Please just apply it. Just apply what you know. And the person marking your paper, because it's the same professional skepticism, whatever marks that you deserve will be given to you. So please, on this note, let me invite questions from you from chapter 1, from question 1 up to question 5. If you have any question, feel free and ask your question so that I'll try as much as possible to help you. I'm not really going through the question because the answers have been given to you, but let me still mention that the answers given to you is just generic answers. It's a broader answers, but that is not what you have to produce in the exam room. In the exam room, complete sentences. But in auditing, sometimes the examiner will ask you to explain in detail. You'll be permitted to number it, critically discuss. You are permitted to number it. Number 1, number 2, number 3. But don't be combining points in the exam room. Okay, don't combine points in the exam room. Okay, we all know that some of, for example, if it is about ethics, some of the issues may lead to intimidation as well as a familiarity threat. Typical example is close family relationship. It is a familiarity threat. It's also intimidation threat. So please separate it. Talk about the fact that it's a familiarity threat. Then you also talk about the fact that it's okay, so please somebody wants to know the audit report, whether it's the same as what we have. Please, it's actually the same thing. It's the same thing. So we're not going to look at any content of public sector audit report. Loretta, you have a question?
Yes, please. Yes, yes, I couldn't join, but when I played back the video, I had some few questions on the going concern issue. I read, like I heard from the audio that you said when the disclosure is not adequate, like the is not adequate, and it's the assumption to that has been used is also not adequate. Okay, we issue a qualified opinion. Maybe if I'm wrong,
Adverse.
that one is adverse opinion.
Yeah, so if the disclosure requirement is not adequate, assumption not appropriate, straight away adverse.
Okay, but if a disclosure is adequate and the assumption is appropriate,
But with material uncertainty, if the disclosure is adequate, but the assumption is appropriate with material uncertainty, that is your modified opinion. But there will be a line in the audit report called material uncertainty ongoing concern. I will share my note with you, and I have a very nice table on going concern. So once you look at it, it should be fine.
Okay, because that on that when like the disclosure is adequate and the uncertainty, I mean the disclosure is not adequate, but the assumption is
so
right.
If it's all about disclosure, okay. So if the disclosure requirement is adequate, you cannot qualify your opinion. That is a principle that you need to understand, or give adverse opinion. If the disclosure requirement is adequate, you cannot qualify your opinion. Now, if the disclosure requirement is adequate, but going concern assumption is appropriate with material uncertainty, that is where you give unmodified audit report, unmodified. But there will be a line in the audit report talking about material uncertainty going concern. The second part is where the disclosure requirement is adequate. The disclosure requirement is adequate, but the assumption is not appropriate. That is where you give emphasis of matter. I told you that the going concern can also lead to emphasis of matter. Formally, and the entire going concern was an emphasis of matter issue. That with the revised version of the audit report, we will issue emphasis of matter paragraph. We're going to introduce emphasis of matter on going concern when the disclosure is adequate, but the assumption is not appropriate. But when the disclosure is not adequate, even with material uncertainty, you qualify your opinion. If the disclosure is not adequate, but the going concern assumption is appropriate, qualify. Disclosure is inadequate, the assumption is inadequate, adverse audit opinion.
Okay, so if the
Chroma,
it's always at
yeah, you're mute to serve, and then go ahead with your question.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, boss.
Yeah, so my issue is on question 2 III.
Okay.
Using the information, your question that you gave us, question 2 II.
Okay.
Using the information provided, identify and explain 5 risks of material misstatement that may affect financial statement you are going to audit.
Material
misstatement.
Okay, risk of material misstatement. Okay, so please,
yeah.
The risk of material misstatement, I told you that the risk of material misstatement has to do with inherent and control risk. Risk of material misstatement relates to audit risk. So we're talking about inherent risk, we're talking about control risk. The two is the risk of material misstatement. Inherent. In the case study given to you, what character of the client or what type of transaction are they undertaking? That makes you to think that they will not get the financial statement right. Are they into a lot of foreign exchange transactions? Do they have a complex group structure? That is the inherent risk. Okay. What kind of transactions are they undertaking? Is it more foreign? Is your group complex? Are they into financial instruments? Is the company new? Has the company been audited before? These are the inherent. Then controls. Are they doing things that will lead to fraud? Who are management? What are the experience level? Do they have internal audit units? Do they have internal monitoring team? Audit committee related issues? That is the controls. So to combine the control risk, how it will affect the audit opinion, and the inherent risk, how it's going to affect the audit opinion. The two will give you the risk of material misstatement. I told you that the suggested solution is too broad, but what you need for the purpose of the exam is what I'm telling you. Okay, any other answer? Sorry, any other question?
I have a question, but it's not related to the question you gave us.
All right, go ahead.
Is there any difference between audit risk and risk of engagement?
I think the other time I mentioned it, I told you that audit risk, engagement risk, assignment risk, principal audit risk are mere terminologies.
Okay.
Okay, so sometimes
Yes,
you meet terms like assignment risk, principal audit risk, engagement risk, and audit risk. They are mere terminologies. It means the same thing. So please, when it's given to you, you should be able to do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please, I want to find out.
Okay, somebody wants to know whether we need minutes, like as part of, you will require minutes for those in terms of, oh, okay. So please, in any audit procedures, you read minutes. So if it is going concern, you're going to read minutes of management meetings discussing whether the company will continue as a going concern or not. With the subsequent event, you can read minutes of management meeting discussing whether they have to make some adjustment to an event that has occurred before. So Jennifer, you can go ahead with your question. So the person who raised issue of whether we need minutes when it comes to adjusting event and going concern, we will read minutes in any audit. So Jennifer,
Sir, please,
go ahead.
with
Yes.
the other, sir, please, with the other information.
Okay.
Is it the information from management that the auditor would instate? I mean, write the same thing, or what is
With
it?
which of the other information?
You know, when you look at the table for reporting, under the key audit matters, there is other information. What has to do with
So
those
that
in
one
charge of
is,
governance?
yeah, I understand. So with the other information, so the other information is really not part of a standard audit report. It's a jurisdictional base. So depending on the jurisdiction that you find yourself, if auditors are supposed to talk about other general information, then the auditors may want to talk more about the other information, just like reporting on the laws and regulations.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question for me? Okay.
Hello, sir.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Sir, please, if the question is telling you that you shouldn't redraft the auditor's report, how do you write that in?
If the question is telling
Sometimes
you
they'll give you the snap,
read draft,
and they'll say that no, do not, yes, that you shouldn't redraft.
you should read draft or you should not read draft.
That you shouldn't redraft.
You should not read draft.
Yes, sir.
But what will be the question? Please, if the question is saying read draft, it means that the draft is not correct. So you follow the format of the report that we've discussed to redraft it. But if you are not supposed to redraft it, then it means that depending on the question, you may be required to, let's say, give a different opinion. Maybe they have opinion and the opinion is not appropriate. So you are asked to express different opinion. That is where you may want to express a different opinion. For example, you can be given a question to criticize audit opinion. So the requirement will not be you redrafting the entire report, but you are just criticizing the audit opinion. So let's say they have given unqualified opinion, but based on the information given to you, the opinion is supposed to be a qualified. Please don't simply write the opinion is qualified opinion and you expect that 20 marks or 10 marks will be given to you. So you state the reason why you think that the opinion is supposed to be qualified. And in qualified opinion, how do you express it? So you just tell the examiner that in qualified opinion, we use except for qualification. So except for items that have been discussed in the basis for audit opinion, everything shows the true and fair view of the company's affairs, or except for the fact that inventory has not been measured at the lower of cost and the net selling value or the net realizable value, everything shows the true and fair view of the company's state of affairs. That is a qualified opinion. We use the term except for. Adverse opinion, we use the term does not. Disclaimer of opinion, we cannot express opinion. So remember these terminologies. If it is qualified, except for, if it is adverse, the financial statement does not show the true and fair view. If it is disclaimer, we cannot express opinion because we don't have evidence to be able to express the right audit's opinion. Okay, so somebody wants to know how to undertake the performance materiality. So with the performance materiality, let me see if I can share my board with you. So with the performance materiality, so with the performance materiality, the key thing is that when it comes to the performance materiality, we have three types or three categories that we used. Okay, we have the revenue, the profit before tax, and the total assets. And the threshold for the revenue is 1 to 2%. The threshold for total asset is 1 to 2%. And the profit before tax is 5 to 10%. But for the purpose of the exam, you can be given 1% or you use the range that we've learned. What it means is that depending on the risk level of the client, you choose your own percentage. It's a range, and the auditor is permitted to choose any range. So if you realize that your audit client is very risky, you choose a lower range. Maybe for revenue, we're using 1% or 1.5%. For profit before tax, you're going to use around 7.5 or 10%. Then you're going to use 1%. If the controls are okay, the client is not that risky. Then for total assets, if the client is very risky, you go for the lower rates. If it is not that risky, you go for the higher rates. Now, when do we apply revenue? When do we apply profit before tax? And when do we apply total assets? Please, we test materiality on total asset for statement of financial position items. I mean, for balance sheet items. So assets, liabilities, equity. So if you are given plant figure to be overstated by 20,000, so you just take the 20,000. So you just take the 20,000 divided by the 20,000 divided by the total asset figure, multiply by 100. So if you are testing the materiality on the 20,000, the plant figure of 20,000, which will be misstated, is that 20,000 divided by the total asset multiplied by 100. When you calculate it and you get, let's say, 5%, then it means that that particular figure is material. So if it has been misstated, then the appropriate audit opinion is supposed to be a qualified audit opinion. Okay, so you take the, let's say, equipment figure divided by the total asset because it's a statement of financial position item. You divide it by the total asset, you multiply by 100. So the percentage that you get will help you to determine whether it's material or it's not material. If it is income statement item, like rent and rates, wages, salaries, some of any income statement item, you take the figure, you divide it by the total, the profit before tax figure, and you multiply by 100. Then you test materiality on it. Okay, so please, I'm not using the board. I'm just explaining it. Okay, so please, what I'm trying to say is that with the profit before tax, figure, what we will do is that we will just take the, with the profit before tax, if we want to apply it, we apply it for only income statement items. So let's assume that the wages figure is 20, it has been overstated by 30,000. You take that 30,000, so you just write wages, 30,000 divided by the profit before tax figure in the income statement. Then you multiply by 100. If you get 15%, because it's more than the threshold, the 10%, we would say that it is material. But when you calculate it and you get 4%, it's lower than the threshold, then you say that it is not material. It means that it's not material. You can also test a materiality on profit before tax and total asset depending on the item. Typical example is depreciation. Depreciation will affect your income statement. It will also affect your statement of financial position. So when it comes to depreciation figure, which has been overstated by, let's say, 30,000, you just test it on the income statement, which is going to be the 30,000 divided by the profit before tax, then you multiply by 100. Then you test the same depreciation figure on the total asset because it's a statement of financial position figure. So you just take the depreciation divided by the total asset, multiply by 100. Now with the revenue, you're just going to apply the revenue or the sale of goods. So if you have sale of goods figure that has been overstated, you test it on the revenue. So you take that figure, divided by the total revenue, multiply by 100. If it is more than 2%, we will say that it is material. If it is less than 1%, we will say that it is not material. Now, because the sale of goods will also affect your income statement, you need to also test that figure on the profit before tax. So you take the figure, that same figure, divided by the profit before tax, multiply by 100. Then if it is more than 10%, then we say that it is material. If it is less than 5%, we say that it is immaterial. Now, somebody will ask, what about if it is in between? It all depends on the risk level of the client. But for the purpose of the exam, the examiner can give you one rate, 1%. So that if it is more than it, you say that it is material. If it's less than the percentage, then you say that it is not material. If the range is not given, it depends on the risk level. I told you that if a particular client is very risky, you go for the lower percentage. If the client is not that risky, then you go for the higher percentage when you are testing the materiality. It's very, very simple. So when you are given a question on materiality and it comes for 10 marks, please try as much as possible and get all the 10 marks. So with quality control firm, okay, so quality control, our time is up, but let me talk about this before we close. So when we talk about quality control at the firm or the engagement level, I told you that at the engagement level means where you're going to perform specific audit work. Firm level means at the entire audit firm level, the quality control procedures that are supposed to be in place. So Vida, I'll come to you. The quality control procedure that are supposed to be in place at the audit firm level. So typical example is that we want to achieve audit quality. And quality, as we all know, is very difficult to define quality, just that it has to do with application of ethical principles, good leadership and experience to be able to achieve audit quality. So at the firm level, there's supposed to be leadership and firm responsibilities. There's supposed to be leadership and firm responsibilities. What it means is that at the firm level, at the firm level, there's supposed to be firm and leadership responsibility. So what it means is that everything in the audit firm is supposed to be directed towards audit quality. And you need to get somebody to be responsible for quality control. And we prefer that somebody at the partner level, because when you are appointing a quality control officer, you appoint somebody with experience, somebody who has the ability, the capability to be able to carry out the work, to be appointed as a quality control officer. Human resource issue is a quality issue. The way you recruit people and maintain them is quality issue. And HR will be looking at health and safety, recruitment, promotion related, and the rest. These are all quality related issues. Then the next one and quality becomes engagement performance, how you perform the audit work. There's supposed to be a standard manual on engagement performance, review, how it's supposed to be done, assignment of work, direction, supervision, and the rest. That is the engagement performance and acceptance. So in fact, the way you accept clients is a quality issue. Okay, because if you accept a client who is into money laundering, it means that you may be in trouble. So please, you need to check all that before you accept the new clients. Vida, you go ahead with your question. So at the firm level too, is the same thing. It's the same points that we apply. Documentation is a quality issue. Monitoring is a quality issue.
Okay, so sir, my question is, assuming the examiner asks you for, like he gives you a figure, and then based on the calculation, the materiality, let's say, is 100 cedis. However, the organization is risky. Based on what you have done, you have seen a lot of
so
risk.
it's going to be in the form of percentages. Are you getting it? So let's say that the examiner will give you 5%. And based on your calculation, you are getting 8%, right?
Okay, so let's assume that you got the, per what you are finding, or maybe your rate is even lower than the threshold that the examiner has given you.
So it means it's not
however, material. It's not material, but then the business of the organization, you've seen a lot of risk associated with the client business. Can you set a performance materiality level?
So the performance materiality level is what will be given to you by the examiner, because practically that is what you said. That's the major reason why we have the range. So when you are performing your work, you can say that when it comes to revenue item, you place reliance on 1.5%. Total asset, you'll be using 1.5. Profit before tax, you're going to use 8%. So if it is more than 8, material. If it is less than 8, immaterial. But please, when it comes to concept of materiality, certain things are material by its very nature. So that one, you don't calculate any percentage. Transactions relating to the directors of the company, going concern issues are material by its nature. But it's material and also pervasive because it's a fundamental issue in accounting. So you don't do any computation. Are you getting it? So when it comes to transactions with related parties, with directors of the company, they are material by its very nature. You are not supposed to do any computation to confirm it. But with the other ones, that is where we use the calculations to confirm whether the figure is material or it's not material. Okay, so I think we don't have any other question. My only advice is that continue to go through it. Read the manual that I've shared with you. I'll try and reshare one with you, updated one with you, which is not that different from what you have. Just that something small has been added to the current issues. But please go through what you have, go through the more questions that I've given you. Follow the process or the strategies that have been given to you for the purpose of the exam. Don't be writing too much. Don't write too much. This is audit paper. You are not expected to write too much. The results will come and you'll be very, very, very happy. So I want to wish you well, and I'm very positive that if you're going to apply whatever strategy, whatever technique that has been given to you during our 2 weeks discussions, you'll be able to write the exam and pass. And our colleagues who are also writing other papers like corporate reporting and the rest, I wish you well. And for corporate reporting students, one key thing in corporate reporting is your ability to manage time. try as much as possible, get to the exam room very early and manage the time level. Don't be wasting your time consolidation after the copy backs, check other areas, and you'll be able to pass the papers. So I thank you for those who managed to give me something. I'm so grateful, and I wish you well, and I know that you write and be able to pass. So God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you, sir.